Situationships are one of the most profitable emotional arrangements in modern dating. Not because they create real intimacy, but because they create a loop your nervous system cannot complete. And if you have ever been in one, you already know the paradox. It can feel more intense than a relationship, more consuming than commitment, and yet you have less clarity, less security, and less real access than you would accept anywhere else in your life. That is the first truth. A situationship is not defined by what you feel. It is defined by what the structure refuses to become. You can have affection, chemistry, routines, deep talks, even vulnerability, and still be in an arrangement where your needs are permanently postponed. In this episode, I'm going to show you the mechanics of situationships, why they feel like love, why they create obsession, why they keep you waiting, and how avoidant and anxious dynamics become the perfect engine for this contract. Not so you become cold, not so you punish anyone, so you can stop donating your nervous system to ambiguity. Here is the first thing to see. Ambiguity is not neutral. Ambiguity is a stimulus. It forces your brain to scan, interpret, predict, and rehearse. When something is clear, your nervous system can rest. When something is unclear, your nervous system treats it like an unresolved environment, and unresolved environments keep attention locked. That is why you can be disciplined and busy and still lose hours replaying a situationship. Your mind is not stuck because the person is perfect. Your mind is stuck because the loop stays open. And open loops create a specific kind of hunger. They make you reach for the missing piece. They make you stare at the last warm moment like it is evidence. They make you treat tiny signals like clues. And your brain does this for 3 reasons. It is trying to find clarity, it is trying to find control, and it is trying to find comfort. Clarity sounds like, what are we? What changed? Did it mean anything? Are they coming back? Why did the tone shift? Control sounds like, what should I do next? Should I text? Should I act calm? Should I disappear? Should I keep it light? Should I wait? Comfort sounds like, I just want relief. I just want to feel them again. I just want my body to stop bracing. Situationships feed all 3 needs without ever satisfying them fully, which means your brain stays engaged. Now we need to name the contract. Every situationship has a silent contract, and once you see it, it becomes hard to unsee. The contract usually sounds like this. If you want access to me, you must be low maintenance. If you want closeness, you must not ask for clarity. If you want consistency, you must accept inconsistency as temporary. If you want commitment, you must not create pressure. If you want repair, you must wait until I feel ready. It is rarely spoken, but it is enforced. And the most important part is that the contract is signed through your behavior, not through a conversation. The moment you accept closeness without definition, you teach the system that you can be bonded without being chosen. The moment you accept affection without follow-through, you teach the system that your needs can be delayed. The moment you accept a reset instead of repair, you teach the system that charm can replace accountability. That is why situationships can last so long, not because both people are confused, because one person is receiving enough and the other person is hoping the structure will eventually change. Now let us bring in attachment dynamics, because this is where the pattern becomes almost predictable. Avoidant and anxious dynamics often create the most magnetic situationships because each side is getting a specific kind of regulation. The anxious system regulates threat by creating proximity. When the bond feels threatened, it increases contact, increases effort, increases attention, increases readiness to repair. That is not weakness. That is a nervous system strategy that once kept you bonded to caregivers. The avoidant system often regulates threat by creating distance. When closeness creates stakes, it creates exposure. When exposure creates vulnerability, vulnerability can feel like loss of control. So the avoidant strategy becomes managing closeness, rationing intimacy, and guarding autonomy like it is oxygen. And when these two strategies meet, something very specific happens. The anxious person experiences the avoidant person as rare, because access is intermittent. The avoidant person experiences the anxious person as intense, because closeness carries expectation. So the anxious person tries to be easier, cooler, less demanding, more understanding, because they believe being chosen depends on being acceptable. The avoidant person stays close enough to receive connection, but not close enough to be accountable to it. This is how you get the signature situationship rhythm. Warmth in flashes, plans that almost land, intimacy that rises, then a sudden shift. Vulnerability one night, distance the next day. And because your brain is a pattern machine, it starts trying to solve the fluctuation like it is a code. If I can just find the right tone, the right timing, the right distance, the right patience, it will stabilize. That is the addiction. You are not addicted to them. You are addicted to the possibility of stabilization. Now, here is a truth people miss. Situationships often feel like they have more chemistry than real relationships because uncertainty increases arousal. When you do not know where you stand, your body does not fully relax. That low-grade activation creates intensity. Then the moments of closeness become relief. Relief is a powerful chemical marker. Relief tells your brain this matters. So your brain encodes the person as significant, not only because of love, but because your body experienced the drop in alarm as euphoria. This is why you can feel more alive in a situationship than in a secure bond, even when the situationship is quietly harming you. Your nervous system is not bonding to peace. It is bonding to the cycle of tension and relief. Now, I want to make this even clearer by naming the 3 currencies that keep situationships alive. The first currency is access. You get proximity, messages, affection, attention, intimacy, just enough to feel connected. The second currency is hope. Hope is the drug of maybe. Maybe it is becoming something. Maybe they are changing. Maybe they are just scared. Maybe the next conversation will clarify it. The third currency is plausible deniability. Plausible deniability is what lets the structure stay vague without consequences. It lets someone say, "I never promised anything. I am not ready. I am overwhelmed," while still receiving the benefits of closeness. That mix is why situationships can feel so sticky. You are paying with your nervous system and receiving intermittent relief. Now we need to talk about the part that keeps you personally trapped, because it is not just romance. It is identity pressure. When you are not chosen, your brain starts believing you must become choosable. That turns into performance. You try to be impressive. You try to be unbothered. You try to be the perfect version. You avoid asking for needs. You avoid being honest about what hurts. You avoid naming what you actually want because you believe the moment you name it, it will end. So you stay in a constant audition. And auditions are exhausting. The reason you feel tired is not only because they are inconsistent, it is because you are regulating yourself inside a system that never offers you a clear home. Your mind runs tabs all day. What did that message mean? Why did they like the story but not reply? Why did they say they miss me but not make plans? Why did they get warm after I pulled away? Why did they cool off after I got closer? That is cognitive labor. That is nervous system labor. Now, let us name the most common illusion that keeps the door open. The illusion is that the good moments represent the real them, and the inconsistency represents a temporary problem. You interpret warmth as truth and withdrawal as stress. You interpret intimacy as proof and distance as timing. You interpret connection as destiny and lack of commitment as fear they will eventually outgrow. But patterns are the most honest information. Patterns show what a person can sustain, not what they can feel in a moment. Someone can feel deeply and still be unwilling to show up cleanly. Someone can miss you and still stay silent. Someone can want you and still refuse the structure that would actually protect you. So the question that ends fantasy is not, do they feel something? The question is, what do they repeatedly do with what they feel? That is capacity. Now we need to identify the specific behaviors that keep a situationship in place. One is vagueness as a lifestyle. Plans that float but never land. Future talk that never becomes structure. Check-ins that revive your hope but do not move the relationship forward. Another is resets instead of repair. When something hurts, it gets smoothed over with sweetness. A joke, a compliment, a late-night warmth, physical closeness, and the problem is never addressed. Sweetness is not repair. Sweetness is a reset. Repair is ownership plus change. Resets keep you close while preserving the same contract. Another is the disappearing act after closeness. The moment you feel connected, they go quiet. They get busy. They slow down. They create space. And your anxious system interprets that as danger and tries to restore contact, which ironically confirms to the avoidant system that closeness equals pressure. So the loop feeds itself. Now, I want to make this practical because your mind might understand all of this and still keep reaching. When you are activated, you do not need more insight. You need a structure you can follow. The first structure is a simple rule. Do not communicate from urgency. Urgency is not truth. Urgency is a body state. When your body is hot, your mind becomes a prosecutor or a beggar. It tries to fix, clarify, secure, chase, or perform. And that behavior teaches your nervous system that anxiety is a command. It also teaches the other person that vagueness can be managed with minimal effort. So the first move is delay action when activated. Delay does not mean ignore. Delay means regulate first, then decide. Then, ask one question that cuts through fog. What behavior am I rewarding if I do this? If your message rewards withdrawal with attention, do not send it. If your message sets a clean standard without chasing or trying to control how they receive it, you can send one short line and then stop. No follow-ups, no extra explanation. Let behavior answer. Because what they do next is the truth. Now, the second structure is the grounding shift that ends most spirals. Replace why with what. Why questions are addictive because they imply there is a hidden explanation that will remove your pain. Why did they change? Why did they pull away? Why did they say that? But in avoidant anxious dynamics, you may never get a satisfying why, because their system reacts faster than their words. So you bring it back to what? What happened after closeness? What happened when I expressed a need? What happened after conflict? What happened when I asked for clarity? What happened when I stopped performing? Those answers create closure because they remove mystery. Mystery is gasoline for situationships. Patterns are water. Now we need to talk about the moment you usually lose yourself. It is the moment your needs become negotiations instead of information. In a secure bond, needs create intimacy. They create adjustment. They create teamwork. In a situationship, needs create distance. When you ask for predictability, you get labeled too much. When you ask for clarity, you get labeled pressure. When you ask for repair, you get told you are overthinking. When you express hurt, they reset with sweetness instead of repair. So here is your diagnostic. A healthy bond reduces nervous system activation over time. A situationship increases it. If the more you invest, the more vigilant you become, you are not healing. You are being trained. That training shows up as tracking. Tracking is scanning. Tracking is monitoring. Tracking is reading signals to predict what comes next. In stable bonds, tracking turns off naturally because the environment does not require it. In unstable bonds, tracking intensifies over time because your body is trying to protect you from uncertainty. Now, let us address why leaving can feel impossible, because it is not only emotional, it is biological. Your brain is trying to complete an open loop so it can relax. So you keep looking for the missing piece. What did it mean? Did I matter? Are they coming back? If I just get one more conversation, I will be free. But closure does not come from a message. Closure comes from a decision. If you are waiting for the situationship to explain itself, you are putting your nervous system in a waiting room. The loop keeps you emotionally active while your life stays still. The decision is the closure. The decision says, I am no longer available for proximity without consequence. I am no longer available for affection without follow-through. I am no longer available for intimacy that comes with a permanent question mark. Now, here is where many people panic. They think structure means being cold. It does not. Structure is safety. Structure is the environment where an avoidant nervous system can choose with less fear, because it is choosing into a stable system, not into chaos. Structure is also the environment where an anxious nervous system can stop scanning because it finally has rules it can trust. So, what is structure in a situationship? It is aligning access with behavior. Consistency earns closeness. Repair earns closeness. Clear communication earns closeness. Follow-through earns closeness. And what does not earn closeness? Vague returns do not earn deep intimacy. Silence does not earn full access. Mixed signals do not earn emotional investment. Plans that never land do not earn your nervous system. That is not punishment. That is truth. You are telling the truth with your behavior. Now we have to say the sentence that changes everything. People do not change because you wait. People change when changing becomes more rewarding than staying the same. Patterns are repeated because they work. If avoidant distancing reduces vulnerability and you keep them close anyway, the distancing is rewarded. If vague returns keep you attached and you respond with full access, vagueness is rewarded. If inconsistency keeps you available and you keep calling it a phase, inconsistency is rewarded. So the question that ends the loop is this: what am I making work for them? And the second question is more important. What am I making normal for me? Because every time you accept crumbs, you make crumbs familiar. Every time you chase, you make anxiety familiar. Every time you tolerate ambiguity, you make ambiguity familiar. And your nervous system adapts. It learns suspense. It learns scanning. It learns performance. That is why you cannot relax. You cannot relax because your body senses there is no protector inside the structure. Boundaries are the protector. When you become someone who follows through, your body relaxes because it knows you will not abandon yourself. This is why sometimes the biggest relief is not when the person finally commits, but when you finally decide what you will and will not participate in. The nervous system loves decisions. Decisions reduce ambiguity. Ambiguity is what keeps you scanning. Now, I want to give you a clean way to test a situationship without drama and without denial. Ask yourself this: if I continue exactly as it is for 3 more months, will I feel more secure or more exhausted? If the answer is exhausted, you are not in patience. You are in postponement. Then ask the second test. When I express a need, do I get teamwork or do I get distance? When I name something true, do I get repair or do I get a reset? When I ask for clarity, do I get clarity or do I get a story? Stories can be soothing, but they are not structure. A story says, I am busy, I am overwhelmed, I am not ready, I need space. That can be honest. The problem is what happens next. If the story becomes a permanent excuse and your standards keep lowering indefinitely, you are agreeing to an arrangement where your needs become secondary. So the right way to hear those phrases is not as a promise and not as a verdict. Hear them as information about capacity. And capacity is what you base your choices on. Not vibe, not chemistry, not potential. Capacity. Now, we close with the real truth about situationships, the one that changes your behavior. Being chosen is not a feeling. It is a pattern. Stop listening to intensity and start watching structure. Watch what happens after closeness. Watch what happens after conflict. Watch whether repair exists. Watch whether the relationship becomes easier on your nervous system over time. If it becomes harder, you are not building security. You are building vigilance. And if the dynamic cannot survive your steadiness, then it was never stable enough to hold you. The goal is not to guarantee their return. The goal is to guarantee your dignity and your nervous system stability. That is the only environment where a real bond can form, because it removes performance and replaces it with truth. You do not have to become colder. You have to become steadier. And steadiness is the one thing a situationship cannot survive unless it evolves into something real. Welcome to Psych Bond. You're safe here.